For decades, gardeners have been told the same trick. Bury a fish head under your tomato plant and you will grow the biggest, heaviest tomatoes on the block. It is one of the oldest pieces of growing advice in the book, passed down from the Native Americans to colonial farmers to your grandfather's vegetable patch. So someone finally put it to the test. 6 tomato plants, 6 different things buried underneath them. Identical seeds, identical soil, identical water, identical sun for one full growing season. And the fish head, the legendary fish head, came in dead last. Not close. Half the size of everything else. Meanwhile, the plant that won the entire experiment had absolutely nothing buried under it at all. Let me say that again because it overturns advice that millions of gardeners still follow. The tomato, with nothing added to the soil, outperformed the tomato-fed buried fish, buried eggs, and buried kitchen scraps. And once you understand why, you will completely change how you handle every banana peel, coffee ground, and eggshell that comes out of your kitchen. Here is how the test was set up, because the details are what make the results trustworthy. 6 Roma tomato seedlings were started at the same time, in the same trays, with the same soil mix. Same height, same age, as close to identical as backyard plants can get. They were transplanted into a single row, spaced a bit wider than usual, about 2 feet apart, so that whatever got buried under one plant could not leach over and feed its neighbor. No fertilizer was added to the row at all. The soil was simply loosened and left as is. Water was taken completely out of human hands. Instead of someone walking down the row with a hose and unconsciously favoring the plants that looked thirsty, a drip line ran down both sides on a timer. Every plant got exactly the same amount, twice a week, no exceptions. And because buried food is a magnet for burrowing rodents, each planting hole got a steel mesh basket around the scraps, so that what got buried actually stayed buried and broke down in place, instead of becoming a midnight snack. That is about as controlled as a home garden experiment gets. Now, the 6 contenders. The first hole got fully cooked kitchen leftovers, not trimmings, actual prepared food. Old pasta with tahini sauce, a sloppy pot of leftover beans, a spent sourdough starter, the kind of thing people scrape off their plates and figure the garden will happily eat. The second got garden scraps. Pulled weeds, spent leaves, the green clippings that pile up around any vegetable patch through the season. Chopped up, a healthy handful, but not so much that it would mat down and turn slimy. The third got the famous one, catfish heads. Whole catfish heads and a couple of fillets dropped right into the hole. By far the stinkiest addition, and the one nearly everyone would have bet on to win. The fourth got raw kitchen scraps, and this is a different thing from the cooked leftovers in hole 1. This was vegetable trimmings, bits of cabbage, apple cores, pepper ends, used coffee grounds. The stuff most people toss in a compost bin, except here it went straight into the ground. The fifth got eggs, a few cracked open and poured into the hole, plus 1 whole egg left completely intact, just to see whether it would survive the season underground. And the sixth got nothing. Bare soil, the control, the plant that would show exactly what the existing dirt could do on its own, with no help, no additions, no buried treasure of any kind. 6 plants, 6 holes, 1 question. Which buried scrap grows the best tomato? If you garden, you already have a guess. Most people do. The fish head is the classic answer. Everyone has heard that one. Eggs are another common bet. All that protein and calcium going straight to the roots. Kitchen scraps feel productive, like you are recycling waste into food. And the control? Most people assume the control will come in last, because surely doing something beats doing nothing. That assumption is exactly where this gets interesting, because for the first few weeks, the results looked almost boring. The cooked leftovers, the garden weeds, and the raw kitchen scraps all grew at roughly the same pace. Similar height, similar bushiness, a few early flower clusters. Nothing dramatic. They clustered together in the middle of the pack and stayed there. Predictable. Unremarkable. But two plants immediately broke away from the group, and they broke away in opposite directions. The fishhead tomato, the one everybody picked to win, started falling behind almost from day one. Less side growth, less bushing out, a stunted, struggling look that did not match the reputation of the method at all. Something was clearly going wrong down at the root zone, and at that early stage there was only a hypothesis as to what. And then there was the control. The plant with nothing buried beneath it. It should have been starving. Instead, it was one of the two bushiest, healthiest-looking plants in the entire row, neck and neck with the egg tomato, both of them fuller and greener than the four plants that were supposedly being fed. That early split is the whole story in miniature. The thing reputed to help the most was visibly hurting the plant, and the plant getting no help at all was thriving. The explanation comes down to a single concept that almost no one talks about when they tell you to bury your scraps. And once you understand it, the entire mystery falls apart. The concept is surface area. And it is the single most overlooked idea in the entire world of composting and soil fertility. Think about what microbes actually have to do to turn a buried scrap into something a plant root can absorb. Bacteria and fungi work from the outside in. They can only attack the surface of whatever you bury, so the amount of exposed surface decides how fast the whole thing breaks down. A whole catfish head has a tough outer layer and very little exposed surface relative to its mass. Microbes have to grind through that exterior first, then slowly work their way inward, layer by layer. It is slow. It is sealed off. And while it is happening, that dense packet of protein and fat sitting right at the root zone does something destructive. It goes anaerobic. When a large, wet, protein-rich mass like a fish head breaks down without enough oxygen, the decomposition turns sour. The pocket of soil around it becomes acidic and oxygen-starved, exactly the conditions tomato roots cannot stand. So the young plant, transplanted directly on top of this slowly rotting mass, is not being fed. It is being poisoned by its own buried fertilizer. The roots stay small. The plant stalls. That is why the fishhead tomato fell behind in week 1 and never recovered. Now compare that to chopped weeds or vegetable trimmings. Small pieces, tons of exposed surface. Microbes swarm them from every angle at once and break them down in a fraction of the time. No sealed-off anaerobic pocket, no acid zone around the roots. The material is gone, genuinely gone, converted and absorbed within weeks. That is why the chopped scraps did fine and the whole fish head did not. Same idea as composting. The smaller you chop your inputs, the faster they break down. The fish head was the opposite of chopped. It was the single largest, densest, most sealed-off thing in the entire experiment. There is a second principle stacked on top of surface area, and it explains why even fast-breaking material does not always help right away. It is called the carbon-to-nitrogen ratio, and the effect it produces is called nitrogen immobilization. Here is the short version. When microbes attack fresh organic matter, they multiply explosively. And to build their own bodies, they need nitrogen. If the buried material is high in carbon and low in nitrogen, those microbes pull nitrogen out of the surrounding soil to do their work. For a period of weeks, that nitrogen is locked up inside the microbe population, instead of being available to your plant. The soil right around your freshly buried scraps can actually go nitrogen poor at exactly the moment your young tomato needs nitrogen most. The plant looks pale, grows slowly, and the gardener has no idea that the thing they buried to help is temporarily stealing nutrients away. Eventually, the microbes die, release that nitrogen back, and the soil recovers. But eventually might be the back half of your growing season, too late to matter for that year's harvest. This is the part nobody tells you when they hand down the bury your scraps advice. Burying raw, undecomposed material directly under a plant is a gamble on timing. If it breaks down fast and clean, you get a modest late-season benefit. If it breaks down slow, anaerobic, and nitrogen-hungry, you get a stunted plant. And the bigger and wetter and more protein-dense the material, the worse that gamble gets. So what about the eggs? This is where it gets genuinely surprising. At the midpoint check, the egg tomato was thriving, right up there with the control. And the working theory was simple. The soft part of an egg, the white and the yolk, is almost pure protein and fat in a thin, easily accessible form. Microbes demolish it. By mid-season, if you had dug down, you would have found no white and no yolk left at all. Long gone. Converted. The only thing remaining would be the shell. And the shell, made of calcium carbonate, breaks down on a timescale of months to years, not weeks. So the eggshells were essentially doing nothing for that plant in its first season. Which raised an uncomfortable question. If the soft part vanished early, and the shell does nothing yet, why was the eggplant doing so well? The honest answer is that it was behaving almost exactly like the control. And the control was the real revelation. Then the season threw in a real-world variable. A freak rainstorm, the remains of a tropical system, dumped a couple inches of rain on the entire row in a single stretch. Every plant got hit equally, so the experiment held, but it was a reminder that a backyard test is never a sterile laboratory. This was never a peer-reviewed study with replication and statistics. It was one plant per treatment in one row in one season. Worth remembering before anyone takes the results as gospel. But the principles underneath, surface area, anaerobic breakdown, nitrogen timing, those are not in question. Those are soil science. By the middle of the season, the picture sharpened. The cooked leftovers, the pasta and beans, had quietly become the smallest plant of the middle group. Complex, dense, slow to break down, probably gone a little anaerobic, just like the fish, only on a smaller scale. The garden weeds, on the other hand, had surged. Lush, healthy, the most vegetative growth of any plant in the row, exactly what you would expect from material high in nitrogen that broke down fast and released it quickly. And the fishhead tomato? Still the smallest canopy in the row. But here was a twist on the twist. That small, struggling plant had started setting actual fruit, and holding it, while some of the bushier plants were still all leaves and flowers. A small plant, but a determined one, which hinted that the slowly releasing fish might be delivering something useful after all, just on its own stubborn schedule, and at the cost of overall plant size. The only way to settle it was to let the season finish, pick every single tomato, and put them on a scale. At the end of the season, every tomato came off every plant, ripe and unripe, sorted, counted, and weighed by plant. And the numbers told a clear story. The loser was not close. The fishhead plant produced only around 80 tomatoes, and they were roughly half the weight of everything else in the row. Smallest plant, smallest fruit, smallest harvest. The most legendary scrap in all of gardening folklore finished dead last, exactly as its early stunting predicted. A complex, dense, protein-heavy mass buried right at the root zone never broke down fast enough to feed the plant, and spent most of the season working against it. The middle of the pack was a three-way tie, basically within margin of error. The cooked leftovers, the garden weeds, and the raw kitchen scraps. All roughly the same total harvest. The one standout was the garden weeds, which grew by far the most green leafy material of any plant in the row. That tracks perfectly with the nitrogen story. Fast-breaking, nitrogen-rich plant material released a surge of nitrogen, and the tomato turned it straight into foliage. Lots of plant. Good, but not the most fruit per square foot. Then the two that nobody expected. The eggplant and the control. Similar tomato counts to each other, well over 100 each, generally larger and a little riper than the middle group. But the control did something remarkable. It produced the highest proportion of fully ripe fruit of any plant in the entire experiment. Around 70 ripe tomatoes, while no other plant cracked 30. And it did this with the least vegetative growth, meaning it put its energy into ripening fruit instead of growing leaves. Less plant, more finished tomatoes. Sit with that for a second. The plant that got nothing, no fish, no eggs, no scraps, nothing buried beneath it at all, gave the most usable, ripe harvest of the entire row. And then came the part that explained everything. Digging up the baskets, under the kitchen leftovers, nothing. Not a trace. The pasta, the beans, completely gone, as if they had never been there. Under the garden weeds, the same, just clean soil. Under the raw kitchen scraps, something different. A layer absolutely teeming with life. Worms. Pill bugs by the dozen. An avocado peel half consumed, a few pits, and a scattering of eggshell-like fragments. This was the decomposer community caught in the act. The worms and insects doing the real work of turning waste into soil. Under the eggplant, a pile of eggshells and clear signs of life. The whole egg, the one buried intact, had broken down to a thin, fragile skeleton of shell. The white and yolk were entirely gone, and under the fish head, the moment that put the whole experiment in perspective. Bones. Clean bones. The flesh, the protein, the fat, all completely consumed, leaving nothing but skeleton and a lot of worm activity around it. No smell at all, just bones in soil. The material had broken down, eventually, but the breaking down itself had been the problem. The slow, anaerobic, acidic process of dismantling that dense mass had stalled the plant's roots all season long. The roots on the fishhead plant were noticeably smaller and thinner than the thick, healthy root systems on the weed and scrap plants. The fish fed the soil in the end. It just starved the tomato to do it. So what is the actual takeaway here? It is not buried scraps are useless. It is something more precise and more useful than that. The lesson is that raw, undecomposed material buried directly under a plant is a liability, not a fertilizer. The bigger and denser and more protein-rich it is, the more it works against the roots while it breaks down. Your tomato does not want to sit on top of a rotting fish head. It wants to sit in finished, stable soil, with nutrients already in a form it can use, which is the entire argument for compost. Compost is exactly these same food scraps, but already broken down, already past the anaerobic, nitrogen-stealing, root-stunting phase, already converted into the stable, bioavailable form a plant can take up immediately. When you compost first and add the finished product to your beds, you get all the benefit of recycling your kitchen waste with none of the risk of burying it raw against living roots. The decomposition happens off to the side, in a pile or a bin, instead of in your plant's root zone during the growing season. If you do want to bury scraps directly, there is a right way to do it, and it has a name: trench composting. You dig a trench in an empty bed, not under a living plant. Bury your chopped scraps, cover them, and let them break down over a full season before you plant there the following year. Chop everything small to maximize surface area. Skip the dense, fatty, slow items like fish heads and meat entirely. And keep it well away from the roots of anything you are trying to grow right now. That is the honest conclusion from a season-long test. Not a miracle, not a hack, just the plain mechanics of how organic matter actually becomes plant food, and why the gardeners getting the best results are usually the ones doing the least dramatic thing. Compost your scraps. Add finished compost to your beds. Let the soil do what it has always done. And resist the urge to bury something exotic under your tomatoes because somebody's grandfather swore by it. If this changed the way you think about your kitchen scraps and saved you from burying a fish head under next year's tomatoes, type the word GROW in the comments and hit the like button. It helps the channel reach other gardeners who have been following old advice that quietly works against them. Compost first, plant smart, and I will see you in the next one.